Hello, this is the Net Hero podcast. I'm Sumit Bose, and this podcast is all about business and doing better for the planet. It's not an eco podcast, we're not green warriors. We believe that business is good and business will make the difference, but it's about holding businesses to account. So, if you're interested in what we're doing to try and make things better, to stop our polluting of the planet, to stop our global warming, to stop us driving around in cars that are polluting the air that we breathe, this is the podcast for you. It's all about business, it's about invention, it's about entrepreneurs, scientists, and frankly, there's a few wild cards as well. Do hope you enjoy listening to this episode, and make sure you subscribe and follow us on your social media platforms, and please check out our two news websites, energylivenews.com and Future Net Zero. On with the show. What a waste. No, not the time you're wasting spending listening to this podcast. This podcast is brilliant, but waste is a massive issue. It's been something we've covered a couple of times on the Net Hero podcast, and it is very close to my heart because, frankly, I've been pretty shit at it. I've wasted a lot of food. We have fights in our house trying to say why we're buying too much, and I'm glad to say we have reduced that a lot. But if you look at charities like WRAP and the stories that we publish on Energy Live News and Future Net Zero, you'll see there is a phenomenal problem with waste in this country. The amount of food we throw out is shocking. And it's not just here, it's across Europe, excuse me, and dare I say it's across the world. A lot of the times, that is something that we have to sort out ourselves. But at present, if we do waste food, it goes in the bin and then it goes somewhere. Where does it go? How much of that food waste could we reuse? Well, today we're going to be discussing that with Jonathan Rowe from Severn Trent Green Power, which is a subsidiary, is that right, of the Severn Trent Water Group?
It is, yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.
Just before we start, I don't know if you've got any stats in your head, but we waste a lot of food, don't we?
We do, yeah. So across the UK, it's estimated that we waste about 7 million tonnes of food per year.
God.
So that's a significant amount. It's a significant amount to waste. As you said, where it goes, there are certainly some question marks. And, you know, we believe at Green Power, we're part of the solution for making better use of that waste. It's also a waste of money, you know, in terms of filling the shopping trolley and lots of it, you know, ending up in waste. So, yeah, it is a problem.
It's something that, I don't know how old you are, but I remember growing up in the 70s and 80s, and there was a lot less of it because people bought less, and packaging was a lot less. There wasn't buy one, get one free, or any of that stuff. And I think, you know, you went to different shops before the supermarket, and the supermarket obviously had a role to make things easier. But we are wasting more, aren't we?
We are. Yeah, you know, it's a fact that we are a consumer-led society. You know, the habits around food consumption, food purchase, we're heavily influenced by social media and trends. And I guess, you know, I was around in the 70s when we could...
I didn't want to age you, Jonathan.
No, absolutely. I remember the 70s very well. Yeah. You know, you could go to a shop and you could buy, for example, a single onion or a single thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now we're faced by packets, multiple options, 3 for £7, buy one, get one free, you know, lots of trends, lots of sort of social media influence in terms of our buying habits. And as a result, you know, we are wasting a lot of food. Now, you know, what we're trying to do is work with consumers, firms like WRAP and local authorities to drive down that waste.
Yeah.
So initiatives to, you know, meal plan ahead, use shopping lists, be super clear in terms of, you know, what you are buying for what purpose. Can you use some of your food waste in terms of, could you feed your pets if it's safe to do so? You know, in that terms of that waste hierarchy, the first step is prevent the waste. You know, when we've absolutely prevented as much waste as possible, that's where we come along to make best value of the food waste that is left over.
And we'll talk about what you're doing in a second. But this is really interesting stuff because if you look at it, I don't know your local authority, but we've got a kind of food bin thing, right? But they never come and collect it, right? And so what we end up doing is going, all right, organic waste goes into the normal bin, and then, you know, the plastics, the packaging go into a recycling bin. many people have tried over the years. There's been this thing like, collect your food waste, use it for compost. But let's be honest, how many of us can do that? And if you live in a block of flats, where's your flipping garden? So have, being in this sector for a while, I think you've been, do you think we've got it wrong? And I mean the we collectively, the companies, the supermarkets, the government, local authorities, because there's been a lot of good sort of posturing, and God knows how many these plastic bins cost. That's a lot of money, but it's not really changed people's behaviour.
Yeah, so I think if we try and break the sort of problem down,
Yeah,
and say, for example, we start with policy and government. So the government have released simpler recycling policy, which mandates weekly curbside food waste collection from April next year.
right.
So right now, across England, approximately 50% of local authorities offer that service. The remaining local authorities over the next sort of 12 months will be adopting simpler recycling and offering domestic residents the opportunity to recycle that waste. So government
How
will
would that
be
work if you live in a block of flats, like I was saying?
so yeah, so blocks of flats are tricky, but local authorities are working with housing associations. They're
Yeah,
working with their own housing departments to make the collection and recycling of food waste as easy as possible. So communal food waste bins,
gotcha.
things
Yeah,
like small caddies which can be dispensed into big caddies.
yeah,
But if you look across sort of social, economic, and demographics
yeah.
at the recycling rates, there is a big disparity.
Is there?
Some households are recycling around 2.5 kilograms per household per week, and some around as low as zero point 0.8. And when you actually look at sort of some of the blockers for recycling, some people use them occasionally, so maybe
Yeah,
at Halloween or
yeah.
Christmas when they're generating a lot of food waste. Some people are regular, reliable users, and some people, it's quite easy to scrape into your residual waste bin.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know,
I'm one of those, to be honest with you. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, and
and I've not seen anything from my local authority, and I live in North London, to say, by the way, we're going to start collecting these bins. So that'll be interesting. So that will be mandatory, will it, from next year
it
sometime?
will be. There'll be some local authorities who will be adopting that policy
Yeah.
in a year or two from now. So they've got what we call transitional arrangements. So they're locked into long-term contracts in terms of waste recycling, waste collection, street services, that sort of stuff. So once those contracts come to an end, they will be expected to adopt simpler recycling.
Okay. So look, we've talked about the problem, and I do think there is a cultural shift that it's got worse because we are, you said it earlier, we're much more of a consumer society. But let's talk about what happens when you get to the point you said, right? We've tried our best, and then it ends up with you guys, right?
Yeah.
So people have seen and they know about incinerators, they know about energy from waste, and they've seen these things, and they've been around for a long time. But there's a big problem that they're toxic. They burn stuff, and it stinks, and it's not great, and everyone can see these things. There's a big one in North London, not too far from where I am, and everyone knows it. And it's trying to do things better. But just stepping back before we talk about exactly what you're doing, um, what is the problem with food? I assume because when it comes to you guys, does it come as food, i.e., the organic matter, or does it come as food in packaging? So someone's left some soup in a can or some food in a plastic bag, like a lettuce. So you'd have to get rid of those things. Talk me through how the food waste actually gets to you and what state it's in.
Sure. Okay. So we receive food waste from domestic customers.
Yeah.
So households that produce food waste and is collected by their local authority and delivered to us. We also receive food from food manufacturers and distributors as well. So
Okay.
maybe waste food. We
Commercial.
have really high standards around quality control. So if, for example, some food doesn't necessarily meet those high standards, those
Yeah.
companies will come to us to responsibly dispose and recycle that food. So they're the two main streams that we receive. For the household collections, they do come in a combination of packets. So
Mm.
some could be in carrier bags, some could be in biodegradable food caddy liners.
Yeah.
Some could come in the original packaging, for example. So if
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
buy, a punnet of blueberries
Yeah. Yeah.
and half
And
the
the
blueberries
plastic
are
thing.
left,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So what we do at Green Power and what we do across the food waste recycling industry is we receive that waste and then we depackage it through a process, which
How on earth
basically
do you do that? I hope there's not someone having to undo them all.
no. So for certain waste streams, so for example, if we were taking waste from a food producer that was palletized, boxed, we would manually unpackage that and
Right.
recycle that material.
Yeah.
But for the vast majority of our waste,
Yeah, your
we use
punnet of
some,
blueberries is a perfect
yeah,
example.
exactly. We use something called a hammer mill, which
Okay.
basically is a screen and a process that separates out all of the organics from the plastics and the
Ah,
paper.
gotcha.
So it basically crushes the packaging and completely separates out the organic from the recyclable material. It then goes through an additional process of sort of compression, and then any residual organic material is then separated and feeds back into the process. So you get a really nice separation at that
Wow.
point.
What percentage do you think you get out? Because obviously there might be some bits that don't go, but how much of the organic material do you reckon you cover out if it's
So
on?
I would say we would probably take high 90%. So I
Wow.
reckon around
Wow.
95%.
Wow.
When you see the process and it comes into a bunker, and you can imagine what it looks like with lots of different
Yeah.
foodstuffs, the packaging part of the process, when it settles out, it literally floats out of a conveyor screw. So it's
Wow.
very dry and
Ah.
it's very organic free at that point.
So let's
Because the
talk.
the value for us is
Yeah,
in the
of course.
organics. So, every last piece of organic material we can squeeze out of that helps
Yeah,
with the
yeah,
energy
yeah,
generation.
yeah. I know that you're the sort of. I think you're the biggest clean energy from food waste manufacturer. But let's go through those two pathways then. Let's take the organic food and let's take the plastic, the packaging secondly. So what happens to the organic food? You've gone through this machine. What do you
Yep.
call it? A hammer smasher or something?
Hammer mill.
I
Yes.
like it. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It looks
this
good
thing
as
goes,
well.
squishes it out, and out comes
Yep.
the organic mess, right?
Yep.
Cabbages, bits of food, whatever it is. What do you do with it?
So basically, we take that organic material, we mix it with a liquid. So we also receive waste water washings, brewery washings, food
Ah,
waste, process washings. So in a liquid form. So a
right.
byproduct of either food and beverage manufacture. And we mix it. We create what's called a soup. It sounds very
It must
exciting.
stink.
It smells a little bit. I can't deny, but this is all within an enclosed building, so
Right.
you know
Okay.
we've got no odors that are escaping there.
Thankfully,
Um,
yeah.
and then we treat that through anaerobic digestion.
So anaerobic is bacteria, correct?
It is, yeah. So what we do is we feed that soup into a anaerobic digester, which is an oxygen-free environment.
Yeah.
We warm it to around 35, 36 degrees, and the microorganisms and the bacteria in that environment then break down those proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids and
Uh-huh.
form what we call volatile fatty acids, which then further break down to produce methane, so 60% methane,
Wow.
and 40% carbon dioxide with a little bit of hydrogen sulfide in there, and water. And what we do then is we capture that methane and carbon dioxide, and then we create renewable energy either through combined heat and power units where we create electricity, which is like a huge generator,
Yeah.
or an area of growth and real sort of innovation, and where we see our future is biomethane.
Right.
Now, the other advantage of anaerobic digestion is, in addition to the gas that you produce, you also produce a really useful soil conditioner.
So you get the mulch or whatever it is producing the so you've got the hydrogen, sorry, you've got the carbon dioxide, you've got the methane. And what about the residue? What do you do with that stuff?
So yeah, we call that digestate. So we make that available for local farmers for use in agriculture, for use in horticulture. So, we're really fulfilling that circular economy brief. So that digestate is a real viable alternative to, carbon intensive fertilizers.
Gotcha.
It's really nutritious in terms of phosphorus, nutrients, potassium, all of those great sort of elements that make up a good fertilizer. And more importantly, we're producing this locally, so we're actually able to serve the local farming community by providing a very cost-effective
Yeah.
soil conditioner that can then be used to grow food and crops and other things.
What about bone? I didn't ask you about this because obviously there's bits of meat and stuff get thrown in. What happens
Yeah.
to bone? Is that all just mashed up as well?
So it all gets mashed up as part of our sort of permits and compliance. We have to be regularly tested for animal byproducts.
Yeah, yeah.
The process is centered around making sure that all elements of treatment and digestate spreading are certified to a high standard, and they meet all elements of the requirements of those permits and licenses.
So, but when you do that food in the digester, it's both plant material and animal material, is it then?
So yeah, there could be bits of meat left over from, say, Sunday dinner or
Yeah, yeah,
sandwiches or
yeah, yeah.
certain things. So there is meat, there's vegetables, there's peelings, there's pretty much everything that would go into a food caddy ends up in that process. Now, it is processed through anaerobic digestion over 40 days. So there
Yes.
is a complete breakdown of that material in terms of, what comes out of it is a safe, readily available, good to use soil conditioner. That when you actually see it, it's in a liquid form. So, it's good to go in terms of using that for the good of the
Instead
land.
instead of a chemical fertilizer. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good. All right, so that's that. What about the plastic stuff and the packaging? What happens with that?
So after we depackage, we've taken as much of the organics as possible. It's quite a dry material. So I think historically that would have gone to landfill. But for our material, the next best alternative right now is energy from waste. So not perfect in
No,
terms of
that is
dealing with
burning,
that.
basically, isn't it?
It is. It's creating heat and energy. And where I am today in Coventry, for example, there's a local heat network that provides heat and energy for city centre businesses and buildings. So, where possible, we're trying to extract the value and use that responsibly where we can. So what we are looking for, and the industry is looking for going forward, is actually how do we get end of waste status for that plastic? So, can we recycle that further in terms of solid recycled fuel or other innovation that we can apply to that waste plastic to reduce the carbon impact?
So at present, most of it is burned, and you get energy, and I get that steam, whatever.
Yeah.
What about the residual stuff that's left? Because there will be some bits left. Do you have to put that in landfill, or what do you do with it? How do you get rid of those last bits?
Yeah, so we process all of the material. So essentially the only waste product is the plastics. We extract all of the or it's about 95% of the organics.
Yeah.
That last couple of percent is obviously could be attached to the packaging in some way, shape, or form. But what we're trying to do is extract as much of the organic material out of that as possible, because we can create energy from it.
Emissions. Obviously, you will still have emissions because you're burning something. What are you trying to do to try and make sure there's nothing too toxic coming out? There's lots of regulations about air pollution and in sites like yours. So how do you ensure that people living nearby aren't badly affected by anything that comes out of your burners?
Yeah, of course. So, with the assets that we operate, so combined heat and power units, biomethane upgrade units, they are all permitted in terms of their emissions. So, they have to be operated and maintained to a standard. We routinely monitor all aspects of our storage and treatment for methane emissions. So making sure that, we don't have any leaks, that there aren't any unexpected emissions as a result of maintenance issues. And we obviously routinely sort of maintain our equipment in line with manufacturers' recommendations. So in terms of, to your point, there are some carbon dioxide releases naturally. And for example, if we use our combined heat and power assets to create energy, there is an exhaust gas,
Of course.
but what we're able to do is to extract the heat from that exhaust gas. So remember I said we need to heat our digesters to 40 degrees. We
Yeah.
take all of that residual heat from the exhaust gas and then use it for the plant to provide heat for the digesters. So we're trying to
And are you,
capture where possible
yeah, I was going to say, are
any
you
heat.
looking at carbon capture for the last bit?
So we are. So, we believe going forward, carbon capture and carbon dioxide capture for maybe the food and beverage industry is the way forward.
Yeah.
Um, cleaning that up and making that available and reusing that is going to be sort of part of our innovation and growth journey going forward. I think if you were to build a food waste plant today
Hmm.
versus the food waste plants that are considered first generation, you would definitely include carbon dioxide capture. You would include maybe biomethane refueling for vehicles, EV charging points.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, as
It
our
changes,
plants,
yeah, as the
yeah,
technology.
it
Yeah,
changes. And, as innovation moves on and the treatment options and the sort of value recycling options mature,
yeah.
then, we'll actively look to exploit those options. But I think it's also worth remembering with food waste and crop waste, when plants are grown for food and they're consuming carbon dioxide, so
No,
they
true, I get
are
it.
they
Yeah.
are a natural carbon sink. So what we do when we burn or when we produce we burn the biomethane to produce clean electricity or biomethane, there is an element of CO2 that is released to atmosphere, but that is, offset by the earlier cycle. And
Yeah.
um, you know, methane is 25 times more pollutant than carbon dioxide. So absolutely,
Yeah.
extracting the value from the methane is what we're all about.
You've got solar as well, I think. Yeah.
That's
What do you,
right.
what's that for? Just like solar to power your own plant? I assume you're not making solar from food, are you?
No, no. So we have 33 small scale solar installations. So we're
Right.
part of the Severn Trent Group.
Yeah.
So we're able to provide behind the meter energy
But that's for your
solutions
own power.
for
Gotcha.
water, yeah, to
Yeah.
offset the energy consumption as a result of treating wastewater.
And obviously you're part of a water company. So what about hydropower? Does that play a role in any of this?
Yeah, so we've got five hydroelectric power turbines located across England and Wales. It's been an exceptionally dry year this year, so
Not
reservoir
ours.
levels have been a little lower, so production's down on those. But it's a very cheap, reliable source, and it's in abundance in a water company, as you can imagine. So yeah, we have wind turbines as well as part of our energy portfolio.
So in terms of what you're doing, you said you've got several sites. Is it across the Midlands? Where are they based?
Yeah, so we've got 10 sites across England and Wales.
Right.
So we're operating in Devon, London, Oxford, the
Oh,
Midlands. So
right.
we've got a good geographical spread. And we also have a crop waste AD facility in Nottingham as well.
Do you have any idea of how, I mean, it's probably quite tricky, but the amount of emissions you believe you might have, prevented, particularly wet landfill emissions, because that's, awful stuff.
Yeah, so I don't have the figures immediately, but there's a figure that's used that every ton of food waste that is
Yeah.
recycled can
Yeah.
save a ton of CO2 being released to the atmosphere.
Okay.
So, what we are doing is the right thing. The alternative in terms of landfill, where
Yeah.
methane will leach out over time, and we talked about energy from waste. What we do and the solution that we offer is the sort of the cleanest and the greenest and the best opportunity for recycling unwanted food waste.
This problem is going to get worse before it gets better. So we talked about consumers at the beginning. I don't really want to go there because we have to change, and I think people will change. My kid's growing up with a recycling bin, right? I know about that. So it's very different times. Um, do you think from the other side and your side that you'll be able to, whatever waste we do produce, you said 90%, get that to 98, 99? near as 100% as possible. Get rid of the CO2 emissions that you still produce, even if they're small, because this is where a business solution can come in, because we've got to do our bit and change. But at the end of the day, if we're still producing, millions of tons of food waste, we've got to make sure that that is not going out and causing huge emissions. So 5-10 years down the line, how do you see your industry improving its ability to capture as much as it can?
Yeah, so I think we've got a huge part to play, both in terms of sort of educating consumers, but also helping the UK reach its net zero target. So if we take biomethane, for example, Green Power and the industry believe that biomethane has got a real part to play in sort of decarbonising the grid. We're naturally going to need to use gas, probably for 2030, maybe longer. But we're founding members of something called the Green Gas Task Force, and we believe that biomethane could make up a third of the gas makeup by 2050. So a critical path item in terms of, decarbonising gas where possible. And we're trying to lobby and influence government and policymakers to, set some biomethane targets. So, for example, solar, we've got a UK solar roadmap that's been produced by the government out to 2030, which says, we want to treble solar output by 2030. We want the government to recognise biomethane to, extend the green gas support scheme so that we can attract investment in the sector and build the right generation of plants for all of those sort of additional capture opportunities, whether that be plastics, CO2, etc. We want them to recognise and add value to the digestate that we produce and the benefits that has over energy-intensive fertilisers that are transported hundreds of miles. So we want biomethane to be an active part of that gas makeup going forward. Now, in terms of educating consumers, we want people to sort of think a little bit more. So when you dispose of something in your food waste caddy, you often forget about it at that point. But what that food is doing is it's powering homes, businesses, hospitals, schools, your mobile phones with a renewable energy source, which is just the right thing to do. And the alternative, landfill, if you don't recycle responsibly, it goes in your residual waste bin, which probably ends up being burnt, and then we miss the opportunity of extracting the energy from those organics. So I think it's absolutely around consumer education and awareness. I think it's about the industry innovating and reducing waste where possible and making it even cleaner and greener. And then I think the final piece of the jigsaw is getting the government to recognise and lock in biomethane as part of a pathway to net zero.
Yeah, brilliant. I couldn't agree with all of that. It's perfect. It's absolutely right. I think that's the way it is. I do think at the end of the day, it's still down to us. Jonathan, you've inspired me to go and get a caddy now tomorrow, so I'm going to do that. Thanks for joining me. Really good chat and very interesting stuff. Thank you for your time.
No, thank you for having me. Thank you.
No worries. Let us know what you think, audience. How much do you recycle your food? Do you think you'll be powering your food with, your future with food? Maybe that's what's happening. Tell us what your kids think, because kids are always very good at this stuff. Get in touch on social media. You know what to do. And also make sure if you've got a story you think should be featured or a person who should come on the Net Hero podcast, email us nethero@futurenetzero.com. My thanks to Rob for this week's production. See you very, very soon.
You've just heard the Net Hero podcast from futurenetzero.com. Join us as we help you find ways to cut your carbon footprint as we head towards net zero. Subscribe and follow us on social media. futurenetzero.com. Better business, better planet.